Well, it's my pleasure to welcome you all here to our Science Poetry Cafe. And we'd like to thank Noni's Cafe for letting us host this event here. It's really nice of them to stay open, and please make sure that you get something to drink if you'd like to take advantage of the fact that they're open for us. So thank you. One thing I'd like to mention to our readers is that Weston is taking a video recording of the readings that will be posted on our Writing Center YouTube page. And so if you would like to not be filmed as you read, just let him know and he can turn the video off, and you're welcome to do that. So we'll begin with our first three readers. Those are Vanessa, followed by a reading that I'm doing. My name is Kendall. And then Sasha Broadstone next. So.
All right, I only have one science poem, so I'm going to read that one. Sometimes I look up at the stars and think they are so old and so tired, spreading themselves thin debris, clouding their once rigid shapes. Are they trying to pull themselves back together? They are pulled in so many directions and are so tired of being polished scraps of color. The universe was not created on accident. I have seen photos of the pillars of creation and the mice galaxies stumbling across the expanse to find their footing and trying to become one with each other, leaving trails of stars behind. So beautiful, so miraculous. It cannot be an accident, this chalk dust carelessly thrown into the universe.
One reason I study forest ecology is because some years ago, I wanted to learn about forests by spending time in them. This summer, I'll go back to the study plot that my research is based on for the 10th year in a row. What I want to share with you today are some excerpts of letters I've written over the years during times when I was camping in Yosemite National Park and working in our study plot, the Yosemite Forest Dynamics plot, which we call YFDP. This first excerpt was written to a friend in the summer of 2017 and describes how I organize my tent, the one place of privacy a person can have for the 3 months of field season. I had just arrived in Yosemite to begin work here. I set up my little home in our group campsite. It is a blue tent, then a foundation of 2 half-inch thick foam pads spread across the entire tent bottom, my accordion pad, my 1/4-inch foam pad, a thick wool blanket, my summer bag, then a fleece blanket. On top of all that go my sleeping bag, book, headlamp, and this little journal book. I have one pile of pillow clothes by the head and a line of work clothes along one edge of the tent. This is where I read, think my thoughts, and write private letters. The reason we're there, car camping in Yosemite, is to collect data, ideally to answer questions that sound interesting and important. For example, some trees in a forest die in a fire. Then they drop their dead needles. These needles lie on the ground. They are fuel that could spread the next fire. How much fuel is accumulating each year? When would it be best for that forest to burn again, if the goal is to have the fire spread on the ground and not spread to the canopies of the few remaining 500-year-old sugar pines? We try to answer these questions by collecting data from our plot, a rectangle of forest that is a 1/2 mile long and a 1/4 mile wide. But even when I think the questions are interesting and important, I struggle with the robotic nature of the work and the fact that the whole point is that everyone collects data in exactly the same way. This makes me feel like there's no reason for me to be there doing it, because by rule, there is not supposed to be anything special or individual about the work I perform. And not only am I confined to the tasks of a robot, but the robot costume I wear is embarrassing. The isolation of the work has removed my self-consciousness. All decisions have become practical. How to improve efficiency while hiding all skin from the sun. In the summer of 2017, I wrote to my brother, describing me, the robot, at work. Erica and I are collecting needles and bits of sticks from sampling baskets in the plot. We put the material in paper bags, which we label and staple closed. Then we put these bags into larger plastic garbage bags that we cart around on the shoulder. I wear a bandana with 2 adjacent corners knotted. The knot rests on my forehead. I tuck the flaps of the bandana over my ears and neck and into the collar of my long-sleeve shirt that is buttoned up all the way. I cinch the apparatus to my head with a visor and balance a hard hat on top. Then I go to work. Some days in the plot, we work alone. And when we sit down by ourselves to eat, we can listen to the sounds of the forest and wonder why we are there. One solo lunch in 2016, I wrote this in my field notebook. I could come back here in 30 years, then a woman twice my age would sit here. She could walk the plot. She could hear young chipmunks marking their grandparents' territory again. There's nothing special about this place, she'll say, except that I have been here before. And yet I do keep going back. Last summer, I returned to our plot, the YFDP, to help with the first week of training. And I wrote this poem on a postcard to a friend who I'd met working in the plot in 2012. It's better to be at YFDP as a volunteer. Every hour of work suddenly treasured as a gift. Gas paid for by someone else's grant. Thoughts of next things to do on my PhD, like Tucker's guitar, forgotten. Before it all begins, I walk down to the meadow to watch the mist hover low to the ground and the dewdrops tremble in the morning light. Birds hiding in the grass and the trees call nonstop, announcing their boundaries for the day. Clear, high sounds that are territorial to them, but peaceful to me. You know, this park has seen me change. It has changed me.
Lower that a bit. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. So my friend Kendall told me about this event over the weekend and somehow convinced me to come up here and read something. Yay. So I'm going to read 2 poems that I wrote. So I was the director of education at Stokes Nature Center for a couple years, and during my time there, educating young minds, you sort of think about certain topics over and over and over again, and try and find new ways to express the same material. So I think we were doing a segment on the rock cycle and geology when I wrote this poem. So here it is. Water, wind, and time, creators of canyons, pinnacles, and caves, stronger than man and mountain, breaking down, building up, slowly wearing away, again and again. From jagged edges to the smoothest ripple, these mighty gods of change are forever molding the clay of our world into new and wondrous forms. While I was also acting as director of education, we invited Star to come and lead a poetry workshop. And it was a cold October night, and I think it was a full moon. And the whole idea was to take everyday people out into the forests and have them sit and listen and experience everything that the forest wanted to tell them. We went back inside the cabin, and then Star led us in a writing experience, I guess. So this poem that I'm going to read, the first version I wrote that night. Since then, with Kendall's help, I've sort of retooled it a bit. But yeah, it's called Night, super original. Cold wind and shaking boughs, twigs twitching, leaves slipping, drifting down. Naked silhouettes of upstretched arms, gnarled trunks softened with moss and slipped with rain, twisting through shadows, reaching above the ground, grasping the moon, holding the stars, scattering cold light upon the earth, drinking in the cold, the damp, the light, the night.
Our next group of readers will be Star, and then Frank, and then Hunter.
Sasha, that was wonderful. Thank you. I was going to say something about science and how science has always helped me talk about and think about the experiences that I have every weekend walking with my sister in the mountains. This is hike number 312. The earth bumps in for lunch. Boy, we need a little cushion on this thing so it doesn't go like that. Science is needed here. Yesterday, April 21st, 2001, my sister Leanne and I hiked the Juniper Trail up Cub River Canyon to the bottom of Litz Basin in the backcountry above Franklin, Idaho. The weather was crisp and frosty when we started out. A thin layer of new snow covered the hills. On the way up the steepest part of the trail from the campground by Cub River, where we parked Leanne's truck, we took turns letting Addie, my little golden lab, pull us up the mountain. We had her on a leash so she wouldn't leap off into the trees hunting squirrels and causing pandemonium in the forest. As we came over a rise into a circle of fir trees, a cow moose crashed through the underbrush 10 yards in front of us and ran down the hollow toward the river. Winter hair clung to her sides in clumps, making her awkward gait as comical as a cartoon. Moose are so ugly and ungainly looking, we smile for hours after seeing one, even though they give our hearts a start when we accidentally get too close. Anything big enough to walk right through a fence has our deepest respect for keeping a distance. Slightly less formidable were the 15 elk we spied lying in snow-covered grass on the high meadow above Litz. They raised their heads and sniffed the air as we came out of the trees, sensing our presence less than 20 yards away. They stood up, one at a time, walked into the trees on the other side of the meadow, then stood in a group and watched us as we watched them. We continued on the trail, thrilled at having gotten so close to them, laughing at their cow-like ways, skirting past their body shapes in the thin layer of snow where the grass showed through in deep green patches. Spring showed its face in the scrubby clearing at the top of the deep hollow that comes down the basin. Cowslips carpeted the hills and trail, interspersed with bluebells and buttercups, spring beauties, Johnny jump-ups, and a few unimposing snowdrops. By the way, this isn't in the script, but you'll notice that I use the common names for flowers. I know. Science, I have a famous botanist cousin from Berkeley, and she always says the Latin names, and I just, cowslips. A grouse startled up through the brush, and we both jumped. Blue, probably, from the racket it made. Keeping to the trail, listening for more grouse, we came out on a boulder-strewn juniper flat before the hollow that would take us to Foster Creek, which turns to Sugar Creek on the other side of Litz. Ice made thick, upside-down spikes on pine needle branches, hanging over clear, fast falls where water plunged over rocks and fallen trees and roared down the canyon. We had to stop for a while to watch the icy fronds wave in the motion of water plunging over the jagged stream bed. There's something about water plunging, tumbling free and powerful down the mountain. It's mesmerizing, exciting, and melancholy somehow. Water, unrestrained and wild, brings out a longing in the soul and a strange satisfaction as well. It portends something beautiful, profound, and fearsome. Addie got a big drink at the edge of the stream and urged us up the brushy, narrow trail below tall rock cliffs that hid a number of animals we knew were watching us from crevices, gaps, and caves. A solitary duck flew overhead. Soon we were in the clearing at the bottom of Lit's Basin, our boot soles meeting a crust of old snowpack under the new. We put our coats down on an incline where the stream had molded a low bench as it widened into the meadowland. Addie sat impatiently on her haunches beside us as the cloud-filtered sun warmed our backs and we opened the plastic wrap on our tuna sandwiches. There on our cushiony snow seats, enjoying lunch, scooping up snow cones to melt on our tongues, listening to water and wind, we simultaneously felt a roll and a bump, as if the earth had passed a stone under us miles down beneath the surface, and the ground rose up just enough to let it through in a wave and a nuzzle that lifted us forward and upward and bumped us back down again. Leanne said, "I believe that was an earthquake." I said, "I believe you're right." We smiled immense smiles, then laughed in pleasure at being out in the open where we could feel the earth move and not be afraid. We couldn't think of a place we'd rather be in a quake. We were pleased and smug and thoroughly tickled over the adventures of the day. We've never had a bad hike, and this one had been exceptionally fine. April 22nd, 2001, the Boise Associated Press reported that a 5.3 magnitude earthquake at 11:18 a.m., its epicenter located about 75 miles south of Grand Teton National Park near Henry's Peak in the Grays Range in Idaho. People reported feeling the quake in Wyoming, Pocatello, Soda Springs, and Salt Lake City. A minor landslide sent debris onto Highway 89 between Alpine and Jackson, but no traffic detours. No detours for us either. On the wide meadow on our way down the mountain, we had remarked over and over how lucky we were not to be buried in a landslide, that our houses and family members were all okay when we got home. It's fun and exciting to feel the earth move when you know it isn't destroying anything. Heart-stopping to realize, to remember that it could, and it has, and it will again. That the motion of a quake spreads out like ripples, and the waves that pass underneath our secure seeming seats can toss our lives into instant wreckage. Right now. It could happen right now. That's what the water was telling us when we stopped to gaze and ponder and listen. The earth moves with and without us. That's the real adventure, the real knowledge, whether we seek it or not.
I'm going to try and do the same. This is titled Petrichor. Snow suffocates me. I await the spring rain to rouse you with daisies and dopamine. When the snow melts and retreats to the clouds, then falls again pure, that's when you will return. You purify days with dark clouds. The masses cannot speak their desire for you, since few know your name. Your senses of childhood, spent running through the fields, soft grass between toes, tasting the rain before it arrived. I await that time again, to dance with you the scent of you glued to my skin in the warm, pouring rain.
We have a few more readers. Can you hear me too? Dawn. I didn't have to use the mic, but anyway. So next up we have Jay, Paine, Mikenna DeBruin, Terysa Dyer, and then in closing, Mark Brunson. And I'd just like to recognize Mark for a moment because this event was inspired by his translational ecology class last spring, and a group of his graduate students conceived of this idea and put on the very first science poetry event here. And so we're in debt to you and your students, so thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes. Okay, so Jay, you're up next.
Hello. The first poem I have is just a short haiku about the Hercules family, so like the Greek plant. And it reads, Hercules crowns flower bright berry-like bursts, breeding from within. And then the second poem I have is actually about the Science Writing Center itself and a plant we used to have down there that we no longer have down there. I'll always remember my first day working at the Science Writing Center. Someone placed a spider plant beside my desk. They named him Peter Parker. Peter Parker sprawled his spindly leaves across the mud-colored pot. He was a nice addition to the matte black computer, the fabric pencil cup, and slips of scrap paper. But the Science Writing Center was no place for Peter Parker. Each week brought a new blotch. Each week saw his leaves crumple and curl. Today, I crumble his brittle leaves between my soft fingers as I sit in front of the matte black computer, the fabric pencil cup, and slips of scrap paper.
Okay, so I have two poems to read, but I think I'll give some background before I read them. So the first one I'm going to read is about my flight back from Phoenix, Arizona to Salt Lake City this past Christmas, and flying through just like clouds and clouds of pollution and how terrible that was to see. So this is called Flight. Stark skies span the desert below. Faint swaths of abused air hide in the foothills, but this exploited atmosphere plays on the ground, not daring to permeate the plain's view. The peaks of South Mountain evade the hug of fuels, and suddenly it is easy to prescribe beauty to clarity, to my unobstructed aerial view. Everything changes across the northern border. Our plane peels back pitch black pollution to no avail. The skies of the Wasatch Mountains are listless. The supposed bare beauty of the heavens is gone, clogged and choking on our mistreatment. Politicians ponder the poisons people devour, so why do they turn a cheek at exhaust emissions, the silent killer of beauty and breathing? That's my first one. And then the second one is about my opportunity to go to Alaska, like 4 summers ago-ish, and being in the Kenai fjords and watching glaciers cave for the first time, and how beautiful it was, but simultaneously terrible it was to finally like see climate change in the flesh, you know? So yeah, this one is called Where Are the Humans? Snap, crackle, pop, crash. Glaciers scream as they splinter apart. Ice slips through the glass floor, disrupting the jetting jellies and offhand otters. Her waters hurtle through the fjord. And where are the humans in the midst of all this? A new snap echoes, not from the cabin trunk of nature, but from the clean click of a camera. A seeping cold creeps, not from the crisp chill of Alaska, but from the before and the after, because of the screams, because of the clicks. Human feet crunch over her ice. They admire her green, unadulterated peace, but they ignore the capillary action of black beneath them, the bleeding of her eroded soil. The last breaths of Mother Nature claw at the backs of mankind, warming them a little too much. The arms of the future cradle life, pleading and crying, where are the humans? Thank you.
Okay, so I wish that I were more scientific than I am. But as it stands, during my undergrad at SUU, I got to get out of taking a physics class by taking astronomy. So there's stars in my poem. That's as sciencey as it gets. Hercules. They say this star is part of Hercules, his shoulder. Stiff grass crunches underfoot, and I stare into the burning gaseous mass that is supposed to be the shoulder of the greatest Greek. Eons back, the universe begins. The sky is an open vault of stars, and it's terrible and it's beautiful. What did stars do before becoming constellations? Chaos ruled the cosmos. Did these stars know they would be Hercules? Brilliant clusters above me teem with energy beyond fathom. Silent, they suffer labels and names and boundaries artificially imposed on their wild brilliance. Every so often one resists, goes supernova. A star expands too fast for category and gains freedom from its constellation. Then the star dies. The supernova fades to backdrop.
So I am a scientist. And most of the time I'm supposed to write dry technical journal articles. But some time ago, some younger scientist friends of mine created a new blog that I encourage all of you to look at called Plant Love Stories. And this is a place where if you've written about plants, maybe you could even submit this for publication. No money involved, but that's also true of science. And so I've done this a couple times now, where I've published there, and plantlovestories.com. One of the things last Valentine's Day, roughly, my friends Becky and Caitlin, who run this blog, had found something called Tiny Love Stories, and they'd seen it somewhere, and it was basically, you were supposed to, in 100 words, could you write a love story? And so then they posed a challenge to the Plant Love Story community and tweeted out, would anybody be interested in writing a tiny plant love story? And so I, for some reason, was inspired to immediately take the plunge. As far as I know, only one other person has done this. But this is my tiny plant love story in 100 words, and it's called Hydrangeas. My stepmother is a painter. Often she paints plants, especially hydrangeas. When she and Dad married, he was 87. A large potted hydrangea occupied their bay window. It became one of Dad's chores to carry this awkwardly sprawling houseplant outdoors in springtime and back inside each autumn. Dad passed away 2 winters ago. A neighbor helped carry the hydrangea out and back. That fall, for the first time, scales infested the hydrangea. I got a frantic call, helped talk my stepmom through the treatment process. That plant has healed now. I like to think it symbolizes the fading of grief.
This is funny. Yeah, sure.
I'll introduce you.
So I need to switch gears here.
Oh, well,
this is exciting. We have just arrived, our last reader. This is Paul.
So, Rand this from PM 2.5. So, a little commercial announcement. If anybody wants to join our volunteer army to stop people from idling in Logan, this is informational, and there's cards up here that you just place on people's windshields. And we have a 2-minute limit. It's the law in Logan. Most people don't know we have any idling policy at all, so feel free to pick up, 10 cards or something and help out a little. So, ran over here from that other meeting. So let me just compose myself. Isn't that what all poets do, is compose? So, you can hear me clearly? So, a little bit of background. Among many other things, I study aspen trees, aspen environments here in Utah and around the world. Does anybody not know what the term pando is, or who pando is, or what pando is? Just feel free to raise your hand. So, at least a couple. So, pando is a large clonal aspen grove thought to be the largest living thing on Earth, and it's in central Utah. So, this first poem is called Arboreal glyphs, and that's basically just pictures on trees. Hey, you know me. I am science, a character, a lab coat exterior, predictable, calculated, linear, my language exclusive, data-driven, inclusive. Matters of spirit and heart, to you I impart. Hey, you know me. I am social doctrine, a container, a two-dimensional dichotomous retainer, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, or Jewish, red state or bluish. Your tribe or mine, I'm a believer. You know me, I am pando, a connection, I'll carry your water, invite you in, spreading, multi-dimensional, teaching, mystery notwithstanding, empty nester, I'm reaching out, generations suspended, pleading, oikos equals family equals house. You know me, I am pando and I am populous, a community. My life spells oneness, transformational, foliage sky flirting, subterranean whispers, from a spot on the map to continental drifters, time, resilience, diversity, roots on roots on roots, I am humility. So, believe it or not, another poem involving aspen. So, who do you know that's a potentially famous person with the initials PT? PT. PT what? Yes. And what did PT famously say? Correct. So all of my poems apparently need some preamble, but in the aspen world, a sucker is a baby aspen tree. So that's all you'll need to know to decipher this one. Dawn light, forest crests ridge, sun ray parting, doe lifts her gaze, new day ablaze. Air taunts leaves. A tremble, a quake, forest flickers to life. Dapple gang blitz, ballroom blooms lit. Swaying Smilacina, Penstemon promenade, breezes ignite, gallery's floor, understory encore. Midday comes, stuns. High noon bedding, insect masses parade beneath X twittering leaf. Roots grope at daylight, meadow recoils. A sucker born every minute. Subterranean reach, forest edge breach. Dusk draws in, quivering tapers, campfire voices, dim with night. Pale bowls hold fast the light.
So to close our Science Poetry Cafe, Star has actually been working on a compilation of our work that she'd like to share right now with us. So this is Star and her compilation.
Woo! I couldn't help it. You're all so good. The stars, so old, so tired, pulled in so many directions, this chalk dust thrown across the sky. Needles, a thatch of needles to fuel the fire. Skin, a robot coat of skin to shield from sun. Pinnacles, caves and pinnacles, jagged gods of wondrous forms. Night slipping down, softened with moss and slicked with rain, holds the light of our lives. Particles, aching, severed, silvered, night left quaking, particles aching, splintered, split, awaiting the taste of the warm pouring rain. Berry-like, a stark beauty, the burning mass, a universe, a chaos of cosmos. Hydrangeas of the Milky Way, the fading of grief, the science of love, matters of spirit and heart, bluish, carried by water, crested by leaves, a new day here.
That concludes our event. I would just like to thank you all for being here, and I'd like to thank the Writing Center for supporting this event too. So thank you, Terysa, Star, Weston, several of our tutors are here, so thank you for contributing. Thank you to those who did, and thank you for listening to those who came. This is an event that we'd like to host again, so keep an eye out. Next semester we'll be trying to do another one of these. So keep writing poems and keep in mind when something comes up that you'd like to share at this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall.